Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle Kaufenberg, and today I'm going to be talking about personal security and violence against women. So, first of all, what is personal security? So, personal security is a general condition that occurs after adequate efforts are taken to deter, delay, provide warning before possible crime. If the warning occurs, to summon assistance and prepare for the possibility of crime in a constructive manner. Basically, personal security protects people from physical violence, domestic abuse, and from predatory adults. So, personal security. Today, we're going to be diving into the personal security and uh, primarily in the Fairbanks, Alaska area. So, we're going to conduct our situational analysis, and we're going to be talking about crime. Crime in Alaska is, uh, in Fairbanks, Alaska specifically, averages 17% higher than the rest of Alaska, while the rate of crime on a national scale is 90% higher than uh, than what it is on actual. You'll find that the occurrence of violent crime in Fairbanks, Alaska, is 31% lower than the average rate of crime in Alaska and 60% higher than the rest of the nation. Uh, Crime involving property stands 30% higher than the remainder of the state of Alaska and 95% than the nation's average. Both of these statistics relate to how safe residents and businesses are while performing uh, everyday activities in uh, Alaska itself. Um, Later on, we're going to be getting into what it is that makes Alaska so dangerous and the crime in Alaska itself. Um, Before we get into that, we should probably talk about the rape culture in Alaska, and this is specifically going towards the violence against women. Um, in rape, there's a story by Sarah Bernard that is linked in the sources area, talking of a woman who grew up in a native village. And it was a story of how Jane was her pseudonym, how she was repeatedly raped and was very much scared and depressed to do anything about it. She was uh, just minding her own business in her house and with no sort of protection or any warning or anything like that. She was this drunk friend of her father stumbled into her room and basically groped and molested her. And then this happened multiple times in her life as well. And it was the shocking thing is that it was not uncommon for these things to happen in these remote villages. Um, in the short history of Alaska, it's insane that the rape capital of the U.S. is at nearly 80 rapes per 100,000 people. Here it's 90 rapes per 100 people. In Alaska, 59% of women have been raped, according to some statistics. Alaska's rape rate is almost three times the national average for child sexual assault. It's nearly six times. And according to the 2010 Alaska Victimization Survey, was comprehensive data to date, 59% of Alaska women have been victims of sexual assault, intimate partners, or violence, or both. Um, and what's actually insane is some of these numbers just skim the surface of what actually happens because of what exactly happened to Jane up above. It was their crimes are underreported, especially in Alaska for cultural reasons. Those numbers are conservative. Um, Says Ann Roush, a program coordinator at Alaska's Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. They are still staggering. Now, the causes of these rapes um, is very much complex. Government officials, law enforcement personnel, and victim advocates note the state's surfeit of risk factors. Some of the things being male-dominated industries, such as oil, drilling, and military, and it can also go down to the geography of the state, such as many communities have no roads. And not only do they have no roads, but they're so rural, especially in the case of these native villages, that law enforcement is very much it's almost impossible for them to get to, especially with the fact that law enforcement is not there is not a large presence of law enforcement here. Um, there's no support services, especially in remote towns, and it's easy for perpetrators to isolate their victims. More than a third of Alaska communities have no police of any kind. It's actually insane. Especially like in some statistics, there's the most commonly used thing for the rape that happens in Alaska, or especially in Fairbanks, is date rape drugs, such as roofies, are used quite commonly here. So this I put in here sexual assault hotline. If you have experienced or anything like that, it's oh, sorry about that. Let's see here. Might be getting a call. It's a medical aid call. I'm not on it. So this is sexual assault hotline, 800-656-HOPE-4673. Call anyone who can be helping. So next we're going to talk about mapping needs, vulnerabilities, and capacities. So domestic violence. Domestic violence is basically maintaining control and power of another in dating, marital, or live-in relationship. And really, what you should be doing is making sure you tell your friends and family. If the means of control or power is stemming from physical, sexual, emotional, and economical abuse, threats, and isolation, especially most domestic violence survivors are women. But both men and women can experience domestic violence. And under Alaskan law, it's actually illegal for another person related to you to hurt you physically in any way, to force you to have sex when you don't want to, threaten or hurt or kill your children, or destroy your property. If any of this happens, please tell your friends, tell your family, and report it to the proper law enforcement agencies. Speaking of law enforcement agencies, law enforcement. So, more than a third of Alaska communities, as I previously mentioned, have no local police of any kind. Criminals have been hired as cops in some remote villages. A federal emergency has been declared and millions of dollars are promised, but it's not looking good. Almost all of those, a third of communities have are remote villages, and the ones that do, the jobs are so low paying and undesirable that criminals are the only applicants. As a result, convicts and even sex offenders have even been hired as city police officers. The village protected safety officers, those are VPSOs, who are basically law enforcement but are provided for the villages, are basically a program that is a combination between law enforcement and fire personnel, and they are so undertrained, understaffed that they are not able to handle the amount of violence that happens. That and they're underpaid, they're undertrained, and they have a high turnover rate, and it's not ideal. Another thing is that many Alaska State Troopers have been deployed to mostly white communities in the road system, while villages that can be reached by plane go unserved, which is quite a shame. Now, development of human security strategies. So, in order for a lot of this stuff to really, I won't say solve itself out, but to kind of help mitigate the problems, is first and primarily to bolster the law enforcement, basically increase the amount of law enforcement presence, making sure that these communities that are not able to get served are have their law enforcement. Roads, make sure that these villages have roads and are access to get to. If you've experienced any type of violence or anything like that, make sure you tell your friends and family. Call your hotlines and report anything that has happened. It's the only way for things to go and benefit is for someone else to know. It's very important that something of that magnitude gets reported. Again, thank you very much for listening. I hope everyone has a great day.